Red alert severe heat warning has been issued in the capital New Delhi as temperatures passed 46 Celsius, and residents were advised not to go out during the hottest hours of the day. Even in the hill state of Himachal Pradesh, where many wealthy Indians go to escape the summer heat, temperatures reached 44 degrees Celsius in Una. Several major cities, led by Chennai, have reported fears of water shortages as lakes and rivers start to dry up. In the western state of Maharashtra, farmers struggle to find water for thirsty animals and crops. Rajesh Chandrakant, a resident of Bede, one of the worst-hit districts, said, "We have to source water tankers from nearby villages as water reserves, lakes, and rivers have dried up." Raghunath Tond, a farmer with a family of 7, said the area has suffered worsening shortages for 5 years, and said farmers only get water every 3 days for their livestock. Scared for their lives and livelihood, Tond told AFP, "There is no drinking water available for days on end, and we get 1 tanker every 3 days for an entire village." The Hindustan Times newspaper said many Bede residents had stopped washing and cleaning clothes due to the water shortage. Experts from Gandhira City's Indian Institute of Technology warned last month more than 40% of India faces drought this year. The Weather Department said the annual monsoon, which normally brings much-needed rain to South Asia, is running a week behind schedule and is only expected to hit India's southern tip on June 6th. And private forecaster SkyMet has said there will be less rain than average this year. The Indian peninsula has seen a drastic change in rainfall patterns over the past decade, marked by frequent droughts, floods, and sudden storms.
बारिश तो अभी नहीं आ रही है कई दिन से, बीच में एक बार आई थी। एक्चुअली फ्रॉम लास्ट वीक इट इज़ वेरी हॉट।
बहुत गर्मी है, हार्ड हो रखा है बहुत। क्या करें, अब बिजनेस करनी है, रोटी तो कमानी है तो आना ही पड़ेगा। एक हफ्ता क्या है, अभी तो पता नहीं, पूरा महीना ही ऐसा ही रहेगा। बहुत परेशान हो जाते हैं, सबके हालत ख़राब हो जाती, कई कई लेडीज से गिर भी जाती है चक्कर आके, उनको बहुत गर्मी लगती है।
Chancellor Angela Merkel said Sunday that Germany's government will push on with its work after her junior coalition partner, SPD, plunged into crisis following the resignation of its party chief.
Sagen, wir werden die Regierungsarbeit fortsetzen mit aller Ernsthaftigkeit und vor allen Dingen auch mit großem Verantwortungsbewusstsein.
Acting U.S. Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan meets his South Korean counterpart, Jeong Kyung-do, in Seoul and urges North Korea towards complete and verified denuclearization of the peninsula.
We stand united and firmly committed to the enforcement of all United Nations sanctions against North Korea until they comply with their international obligations. The only acceptable end state is the complete and verified denuclearization of the peninsula. Our alliance and the international community will not cede to a lesser solution.
Shanahan told reporters Sunday, despite stalled negotiations between Washington and Pyongyang, the resumption of major U.S.-South Korea joint military exercises is not necessary. Washington regularly conducted large-scale military maneuvers with the South Korean Army until the first meeting of U.S. President Donald Trump with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un last year. They were suspended at Trump's request to facilitate dialogue with Pyongyang and replaced by more limited exercises, but negotiations on the North Korean nuclear program have since stalled. Asked on Sunday whether the exercises would resume, Shanahan replied, "I don't think it's necessary." The acting Secretary of Defense added that the U.S. forces in South Korea were already prepared if diplomacy fails with the North. Shanahan said while flying to Seoul for the third leg of his week-long tour of Asia, quote, "I am confident that we have the readiness that we are required to have, the operational forces, and the posture." There are close to 30,000 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea, and their annual drills with tens of thousands in South Korean soldiers have always infuriated the North, with Pyongyang condemning the maneuvers as provocative rehearsals for invasion. However, Following the first summit between Trump and Kim in Singapore in June of 2018, the U.S. president said Washington would suspend the very provocative joint military exercises with South Korea. The two leaders also signed a vaguely worded pledge on denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. A second meeting held in Hanoi in February broke up early with no progress toward Washington's goal of getting the isolated North to abandon its nuclear weapons program. China's foreign ministry says U.S. has set up unnecessary obstacles to cultural exchanges between China and the United States, as China's Ministry of Education issues a statement warning students of the risk of going to the United States.
美方对中美之间正常的人文交流，包括你提到的留学，设置了一些不必要的障碍，已经遭到了中美两国教育界以及留学生的普遍的反对。
China on Monday warned students and academics on the risk of studying in the United States, citing an uptick in visa denials and delays amid a trade war and other tensions. The Education Ministry, in a statement, urged students to strengthen risk assessment and make relevant preparations. The ministry said Chinese students and academics have experienced visa restrictions, delays in obtaining them, and visas with shorter duration. China is the biggest source of international students on U.S. campuses, with 360,000 of them last year, or a third of foreign student body, with many paying full tuition. The warning comes after FBI Director Christopher Wray said in April that Beijing has used Chinese graduate students and researchers, among others, in its economic espionage efforts in the United States. Last month, Republicans in the U.S. Congress introduced legislation aimed at barring Chinese military scientists from obtaining visas to study or work in the United States. The bills in the House and Senate would compel the White House to identify a list of research and scientific institutions that the president determines are affiliated with or funded by the People's Liberation Army. The PLA Visa Security Act would prevent people currently or formerly employed or sponsored by such entities from entering the United States on student or research visas. China's state-run Global Times has published accounts from several Chinese academics saying their tenure visas to the U.S. were canceled, with officials citing concerns about links to Chinese intelligence. U.S. scholar Michael Pillsbury, who advises U.S. President Donald Trump on China, said his visa to enter the country for a forum earlier this year was blocked in apparent retaliation. Coming up, Mexico warns tariffs could cause financial and economic instability. Survivors and their family share personal accounts of the Virginia Beach shooting tragedy. New York takes aim at skyscrapers' sky-high energy usage. Plus, in Poland, you can have your plate and eat it too. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will be right back. Stay with us.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN channel 725, same day as the Philippines.
Net25 shows live and on demand
Anytime, anywhere,
on any mobile device on OSN Play.
What we call Svar, one of the most famous landmarks here in Stavanger, Norway. And if you want to see more of the tourist spots like this, just tune into Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 p.m. I am managing Mihia from Stavanger, Norway. Always fun with 25.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 12 ng tanghali hanggang 1:00 ng hapon.
Welcome back. You were watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Mexico's top diplomat, Marcelo Ebrard, warns the tariffs U.S. wants to impose could cause financial and economic instability and will not help reduce migratory flow in the region.
México ha estado trabajando para abordar el aumento de los flujos migratorios, ofreciendo la opción de solicitar el estatus de refugiado, adaptando el marco legal para ofrecer tarjetas regionales de trabajo a aquellos que desean quedarse o a quienes buscan trabajar en los estados del sur de México. Las tarifas podrían causar inestabilidad financiera y económica, lo que significa que México podría reducir su capacidad para abordar los flujos migratorios y ofrecer alternativas a los nuevos migrantes que han llegado recientemente al país. ¿Cuál es la propuesta de México? Trabajar junto con Estados Unidos, como se ha hecho, y el resto de la comunidad internacional, particularmente con los países involucrados en el tránsito y origen del flujo migratorio, con el objetivo final de reducir la migración forzada por la pobreza, por la violencia. México ha establecido nuevas directivas y ha tomado medidas críticas para salvaguardar la integridad de los migrantes que llegan a su territorio. Como resultado, durante los primeros 5 meses de 2019, 24,451 personas solicitaron refugio en México, lo que corresponde a más de 2/3 partes del total de solicitudes presentadas en el año anterior.
Another mass shooting rocked the country on Friday, with 13 deaths, including the shooter. Eagle News correspondent Sarah Nachman spoke to survivors and their family as they recount the horror of what could have been their death or their loved ones. Here's more.
Virginia Beach municipal employees and families share personal accounts of Friday's mass shooting that rocked this coastal city and the nation. Most are saddened by the incident and are concerned about their loved ones who witnessed the carnage.
I was on my way back. In fact, if I had not stopped for an unscheduled meeting and a haircut, I would have been right in the middle of it. But in fact, while I was getting a haircut, my daughter called me sobbing. She's in the building next door, and they'd just come in and said, "The active shooter, everybody on the floor under the desk." And she didn't know which building. And then when they said it's building 2 up on the 3rd floor, and she knows that's where I work, she just flipped. And so she called me on the phone while I was getting my haircut and said, told me, and she's just sobbing. So I jumped out of the chair and ran down here. And right about that time, the SWAT team was pulling up, and I mean, they had the building surrounded. So, and I knew Rich Nettleton well. You know, he was a great guy. I mean, he was a different department, but I knew him. And I think that's why everybody, including me, are just so stunned. You know, you think somebody you're close to like that, you know, is going to be around. You just don't think it's going to happen, but it does.
Well, my mother-in-law, she had the experience of the gunman pulling a gun on her, and she fell, and he was right there, but he didn't shoot her. Fell first, trying to get away, and he was pointing a gun at her, and then when she tried to get up and picking up her stuff, he was right there.
But he didn't shoot her?
He didn't shoot her.
You said your mother-in-law knows the suspect.
She spoke to him every morning.
She spoke to him every morning. Tell us what she said about that.
She said that she don't know, that maybe that's the reason why he didn't shoot her, because she said she saw him point the gun. She was trying to go. She dropped her things. She went to pick up her things. He was standing right there in front of her, and he pointed the gun at her, but he didn't shoot.
Nothing set off the flag saying this guy is not right.
No.
Regular employee saying hello every day.
Yep. Just every day. She just says she just spoke, and she don't know why he didn't shoot her. Maybe it was because he didn't. You mean she spoke to him every day? I don't know. She don't know. We'll never know. But he could have killed her. I'm sorry.
City employee Loida Daniels described in detail the horror that took place during the shooting.
One of my coworkers yelled out, "It's an active shooter in the building." What I did was my coworkers, I told them to come into my office. We all gathered and locked the door and pulled the file cabinet, and we all laid down on the floor. We did sustain maybe 2 gunshots to the door, and then they were all over. We can hear it in the different parts of the building. It probably lasted maybe 20, 25, maybe 30, but it seemed like hours, but I'm sure it wasn't hours, but it was at least 25 to 30 minutes. Then we laid down on the floor and we waited for Virginia Beach SWAT. They were banging on the door to see if people were in the office where I was, and I opened the door and let them. He wanted to know how many was in the office. I told him, he told me to close the door. And then probably about 15 or maybe 15 minutes later, there was Virginia Beach police that came to tell us that they were here to come get us. We followed their instructions. The only part was there was a deceased person on the stairwell, and we had to kind of walk around it and just to get out the building. They told us to put our hands up and to look up and to walk. They escorted us out of the building.
Reporting from Virginia Beach, Virginia, I am Sarah Nachman, Eagle News International, and I am 1 with 25.
Thanks, Sarah. In the city that never sleeps, even lights, New York is determined to make aging, energy-hungry skyscrapers more efficient and less polluting by requiring the enormous buildings to drastically curtail their energy consumption, and the Empire State Building is leading the way.
We improved the insulation of the building. So we put in insulation between the radiators and the exterior walls, and then we took the windows, 6,514 windows, and we took them out, we broke them apart, we put in a mylar sheet, we resealed them with krypton argon gas, and we reinstalled them. 6,514 windows never left the building. They stayed here. Everything we've done because it made economic sense and because it was good for the environment, and it was good to attract attention to the building from tenants to whom sustainability and energy efficiency and the environment matter.
For New York City, around 70% of its greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. This is much higher than other cities and, than the U.S. average. Other cities, it tends to be more evenly divided between buildings and transportation.
A factory in Poland is developing disposable cutlery and plates from wheat, potatoes, and maize, biodegradable alternatives to plastic, in anticipation of the UE ban on plastics to come into effect in 2021. Polish inventor and entrepreneur Jerzy Wojtkowski catches a brown plate, still warm, as it drops out of a machine, and he begins to eat the crunchy, fibrous tableware.
W odpowiednich warunkach degraduje się w przeciągu 1 miesiąca. Oczywiście on może leżeć i 1000 lat, jak będzie bardzo, bardzo sucho, na przykład na pustyni, ale jednocześnie dosłownie 2-3 tygodnie w deszczach. Dobry kotlet schabowy jedzony na plastiku nie będzie nigdy tak smakował, jak na naszym talerzu z otrą.
Taking a bite, the plate does not have much of a flavor. It calls to mind dry cereal flakes, or maybe what you would imagine cardboard to taste like. But Wojtkowski says what matters is the table is biodegradable. The sexagenarian invented the plate some 15 years ago, and today, Biotrem makes around 15 million of them a year. That figure could soon skyrocket, thanks to a decision by the European Union to ban plastic plates and cutlery starting in 2021. A son and grandson of Miller's, Wojtkowski, got the idea for tableware when he was looking to use up the leftovers of flour production, which takes up a lot of space. But he says he is also driven by the desire to help a good cause, because the amount of rubbish that pollutes oceans is huge and frightening. He explains, quote, "To make the plates, we use only wheat bran, which we compress at a precise pressure point and temperature, using a machine made specially for that purpose."
Badań i rozwoju i nie zamierzamy się ograniczać tylko do tego, co dzisiaj oferujemy, ale chcemy tych produktów w najbliższym czasie prowadzić dużo więcej, również dla innego rodzaju klienta, nie tylko dla restauracji. Być może to będą produkty na wynos z większą wodoodpornością niż dzisiaj mamy.
Przetestowaliśmy wobec środowiska wodnego organizmów żywych, czego nikt do tej pory nie zrobił. Dla naszej kompozycji okazało się, że te sztućce są bezpieczne dla środowiska.
Ja myślę, że możemy mówić, że biotworzywa są na ten moment około 3-4 razy droższe od tworzyw ropopochodnych, natomiast jest to początek drogi obniżania tych cen.
That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.ph, Eagle News Live, and eaglenews.net. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenewsph. Thank you for watching. I am Jennifer Polantan, and I am one with 25.